Hey, check it out. Isn't it pretty? So keep in mind, this is a fisheye camera that I'm using here. This is the GoPro. So you can see what my bike looks like. My bike is about 2 feet away from me, and it looks like it is, really far because of the fisheye lens. So over here, you got this really nasty floor area that's outside. You can see that they really haven't put much effort into maintaining that. You can see that it's also really uneven in addition to having tiles come up. You could see maybe like 10 customers here at a time if you put 2 people per table. Here you've got, this is called the Riviera Cafe. Now you have a bunch of paper on the window. So let's see if we can get a look inside of this place through one of the windows over here. See what it looks like. See, you can't really get much of a view because it looks like they covered up all the inside there. So the listing says this is 2,500 square feet. So 2,500 square feet. Now, from watching my old videos, you know damn well if they're advertising 2,500 square feet, you're lucky to be getting even 1,500. So if they tell you it's 2,500, you're probably getting, you'll be lucky if you get 1,500 if we're being honest here. Now my store is 2,250 square feet, and I can't. There's no way in hell that this is 250 square feet more than my store. I can't even imagine this being like half the size of my store. This is probably 1,300, maybe 1,500 square feet at the absolute max. Now, another thing to keep in mind here is that the way this works in New York City when it comes to these types of, delete that. How much do you think this place is if you had a guess? Wow, I don't even know if that's intentionally. Take a look at the door. It looks like it's falling apart. Can you see how the door is kind of leaning to the left, and it looks like the entire building is kind of leaning to the left? So take a look at those 2 red columns to the left and right of the door. Let's get a closer look over here. If you look at that door, this really does look like some 200-year-old thing that hasn't been maintained since 18-something. Wow. That actually looks like it's falling apart. You see how it's kind of leaning to the left more than... I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing wound up falling down at some point. How much do you think this is going for? Just take a wild guess, because as you can tell, it's a restaurant. Restaurants are not legally allowed to open. It's a recession. Because if your guess is that it costs over $40,000 a month, you'd be absolutely correct. A building that is designed as a restaurant, that you cannot even open as a restaurant, is going for over $40,000. No questions about the fact that, it can't be used. No discounts for the fact that it can't be used. So just to give you an idea how this works, when you're renting a restaurant, you're going to be paying more money for the fact that it's a restaurant. So let's just take my old store. My old store was $3,500 a month. The space right next door was identical in size and layout, and that space was going for over $6,000 because it was a chicken wing place. Even though it's the same size, a quote dry clean use is preferred because it doesn't mess up the building. There's less likelihood to get rats and cockroaches because there's no food. You don't have to mess up the place with all those vent hoods and everything. Since it's a cleaner use, landlords typically will charge less money for you to not use it as a restaurant, and they'll charge more if you are using it as a restaurant. Now, one thing to understand here is that in New York City, you're not actually allowed to open a bar or a restaurant right now. You can't legally do it. You can only do it on the street with street dining or takeout. So what this means is that for $40,000 a month, you need to find a way to serve, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like 22 customers outside. So you need to find a way to seat 22 customers, 2 to a table, outside in the middle of winter, no less, because this is being listed in the winter, and winter is coming, to pay $40,000 a month. Okay, I lied. It looks like there's a couple more seats out here. So you got 22 seats over there, and in this area, it looks like you got, what do you have here? Like 1, 2, maybe like an additional, 5 tables. So you could put, let's say, 32 people. So you can seat 32 people simultaneously outside, maximum, in the middle of winter. You can only serve... You're going to be serving these people only in the summer, and you need to be able to pay over $40,000 a month for this. I wish you the best of luck with that. Can I say something that's probably going to get me in trouble at this point? I honestly don't care anymore because I've been holding in this rant for a good 5 or 6 months, and it's just let it flow. What the fuck is it that we're doing? What the fuck are we doing in New York City right now? What is the plan? Why is everything still closed to the extent that it is? If you take a look, you'll see that we have, I think, somewhere between 0 to 2 deaths a day. And now I'm not even taking into account here that some of these people may have had other illnesses. Some of them may be 99 years old. They may have, cancer, and then they get coronavirus. They may have gotten hit by a car last year and had multiple concussions, and then they get coronavirus. Like, all that entire issue aside, there's a couple of deaths each day in a city that has over 2 million people, and everything is still closed. And I don't see reopening in sight for any of these businesses. What is it that we're doing? I don't understand it. And the thing is, I've gotten a lot of flack on this channel for the fact that I advocate wearing a mask. I advocate if you're going out in public wearing the mask. I advocate keeping things clean. I advocate for some basic social distancing. And people will say, that's stupid. I can't believe you wear a mask at work. How dare you try to protect your employees? How dare you try to, not spread a pandemic? But at the same time, I don't want to give people the idea that I think any of what's going on right now makes sense. And I don't see there being a way out of this, because once you put one of these full-scale lockdowns in place, you are invested in the lockdown. Because when you put a lockdown in place, especially in a city like New York, where everything is barely hanging on by a thread economically as is with the prices, you are going to destroy the economy. You are going to absolutely destroy the economy and your tax base in a way that you're not going to recover from for probably a minimum of 1 decade. And once you do that, you become very invested in the fact that you did the right thing. Because if that was the wrong thing to do, then you just destroyed the economy for no reason, and that's going to look pretty bad on you. So you kind of get invested in this idea that that's what you needed to do and that's what works. And once you're so invested into that idea, what you did was what needed to be done and it works, it becomes really hard to backtrack from that. Because if you destroyed millions of people's livelihoods under the idea that you don't want one person to die, do you? Then what happens when you step back from that? Oh, does that mean that now we can let people die? Okay, so you couldn't let people die in June or April, but it's okay to let them die in September? You see how it kind of makes it hard to get out of the lockdown policy at that point? Which is why I think we're at the point where it is September and these places are still not open, when we have 0 to 2 or 3, or maybe when there's a real spike, 4 people that die per day of coronavirus. And I had a lot of people giving me shit when I decided to keep the business open in March. And I kept the business open because I did not think that this was going to be the end-all curse plague that it was made out to be. So I remember that there was a mortality rate, they said, of somewhere around 3%. So I said, oh crap, that's scary. Let me go get a test, because I'm in New York City every day. Surely if I can pay for it, I can get a test. I can't get a test unless I know someone that already had coronavirus. So if I can't get a test without knowing someone who tested positive, but no one can get a test because they need to know someone that had a test that tested positive, you've then created a situation where nobody can get tested. The only people who are getting tests, that little bullshit game was so that they could hide the fact that they didn't have enough tests available. So the only people getting tested were people who already made it to the hospital, and the people who already made it to the hospital are the ones that are most likely going to be the ones who are going to die. Which means that the 3% was not even close to the actual real mortality rate. I'm not a doctor. I could just put 2 and 2 together when nobody that I knew could get a test. So if you did not have a correct denominator, there's no way that you can then come up with the proper mortality rate. I had a talk with everybody at the store, and I said, if you are someone who is immunocompromised, or you know someone who's immunocompromised, stay home. We'll figure out a way to make this work and hopefully pay you without you here. And if you're not, then, come to work, and if you don't feel comfortable, you can stay home. But just keep in mind that if everybody takes this option to stay home, there's not going to be a company to come back to, because I'm not Bill Gates. I can't pay, 15 to 20K in payroll and rent permanently with no business. And we had everyone wear a mask. We had everybody keep their desk clean, keep away from the customers, clean the machines when they come in, operate in a different way. And it honestly went fine. There's one person here that actually wound up contracting coronavirus, and that was the person that stayed home. He wanted to stay home to make sure he didn't give it to anybody else, and in reality, he actually wound up catching it from his parents who gave it to him. And he wound up, being better in like about 2 or 3 days right after he lost the smell for like 2 or 3 days, and then he was, good to go after staying in quarantine for about another 2 or 3 weeks after, just to make sure everything was all right. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten lots of people that sent me, these that just said stuff that was really, really making it sound like I was this absolute bastard for staying open. And the thing is, hindsight is 2020. However, even with hindsight being 2020, I can't say that I would have done a single thing different than what I did now. I am 110% for a system that ensures that people who are elderly or immunocompromised, A, don't come into contact with anybody who may have had coronavirus, B, don't have to go outside in order to get access to food or the basic necessities of life. Put together some sort of system that walls off the elderly and the immunocompromised from the world, get people to wear masks, get people to socially distance, get people to change their behavior and clean shit up after themselves and take, some basic hygienic practices so that you don't spread the virus. I'm not an idiot, but I can't help but notice that we happen to do the worst of both worlds. Not only do we number one in the United States in coronavirus deaths, about 3 times the deaths of places like Florida that every time I turn on the news they say is, one of the worst places for corona, even though they have about the same number of people we do and 1/3 the deaths. But we are also up there number one in terms of economic destruction, along with California and some other areas. And we kind of have the worst of both worlds here. Like, we got all the deaths and we have all the economic destruction at the same time. And I really don't understand. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe this is what it's going to take to get people like me to fucking grow a pair of balls and finally leave this dump of a city. But what do you think? Do you think $40,000 a month is worth it for a restaurant that you're not legally allowed to open? Let me know in the comments down below.